Lowell Elementary School educated the children of Great Falls for over 80 years, from its opening at the end of the 19th century until its closure in 1979. Named after the poet James Russell Lowell, the first school was built in 1896 at 33rd Street North and 3rd Avenue North, but the building was lost in a fire 20 years later. The second Lowell School was built 2 blocks southwest. However, by the end of the 1930s, the school board felt the school was beyond rehabilitation and began plans to construct a more modernized building 3 blocks to the north. It remained at this location until its demolition in 2017.
Where the present Lowell School is the 3rd building that was the Lowell School. The current Lowell School was built in 1938 with what they call WPA monies, which was government funding, and I believe Lowell School received that kind of funding as well. I don't think it was ever a K-6 building. I think it was K to 5, and then 6th graders went to Roosevelt.
I lived across the street from the school. It was a nice, small neighborhood school. I lived right there, kitty corner from the school on the White House.
I lived a block away from here, so it truly was a neighborhood school. Kindergarten in those days was a half day, unlike now when it's full day. I remember my dear old mom standing at the corner of our house, sending me off to kindergarten and wanting to walk with me. And even at that point, I knew, God, I don't want to be seen with my mom walking to kindergarten.
In 1979, the school board decided to close Lowell School because of declining enrollment and aging facilities. Although students no longer attended, the building was repurposed as the district's Buildings and Grounds Department until 2017.
What used to be Lowell Elementary, this is our Buildings and Grounds official workshop / staging area. So we're standing here right now in the gym of Lowell Elementary. We use this as our carpenter shop.
We had carpenters were in the gymnasium, plumbers were in a special room, painters had the room, larger area because they had a paint area and an exhaust fan and so forth. Electricians had a room, you know, with parts bins and so forth.
As we look around, we've done a lot of stuff in here. All the wainscoting and stuff's all original. The windows are all original. We try not to tear too much of the stuff out. We added the sprinkler systems, of course, and the high intensity lighting and the air line. You know, we've just kind of made it into a nice shop. We used to have a stage up there, which is we don't have anymore in hardly any buildings, and the ones we did have, we converted. So that's kind of a nice touch with the original curtain.
I remember the stage in the gym, and we did Christmas programs and musical programs.
Another interesting thing about Lowell Elementary is the fact that the room we currently use as our welding room used to be the kitchen. In 1939, they didn't have a school lunch program. Most kids walked to school and most kids brought their lunch.
This school was not designed for kids to stay and have lunch. Just the change in economics of the time, talking again post-World War II with the Greatest Generation, you know, you had the Ward and June Cleaver, and June was staying home taking care of the kids, and Ward could make enough money for a family on one job to support a whole family on one job. So as a result, I think most of the kids probably went home for lunch.
I only remember going home for lunch. I don't. Except in kindergarten. I do remember having milk and crackers in kindergarten.
Oh.
This is one of the original classrooms. Part of what we're doing here is before we can demolish the building, we have to have a demolition permit, which requires all the asbestos to be gone from the building. So we had a bunch of piping underneath that had thermal surfacing insulation on it. We've got all that off. And as you can see in here, the chalkboards in this wing of the building were asbestos, so we've had to remove those so that we can get our demolition permit and get on the way.
Real blackboards. We didn't have whiteboards. We didn't have overheads. We had movie projectors, 35 millimeter movie projectors, pull down maps that would have multiple maps within the pull down. Those were pretty high tech. But generally in these old classrooms, there would be an outlet in the front and an outlet in the back. It was very structured. Desks for the kids lined up in straight lines. The teacher at the front of the classroom. That probably worked great in the 1950s and the 60s. Today that wouldn't work so well, and it doesn't need to work out. that way. We need to evolve and change to meet the kids' demands, their needs right now. Now you've got need for so much more power in the classroom with laptops and overheads and all those things.
When I was in school, this was a 6th grade classroom, and it had a true novelty. There was a man teacher in elementary education. We hadn't had any men teachers.
In my time here, we got to do a field trip down to Great Falls High, and Mike Mansfield introduced the young President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, who spoke at the Great Falls High Stadium. Later that year, Kennedy was killed, of course, down in Texas. And I always remember sitting in that classroom down at the end of the hall. Mary Lee got on the microphone system and made the announcement that Kennedy had been shot. Mary Lee, this tower of strength, was in tears. These open doors that you're looking through was our playground in our time. It's changed a bit over the years. Picture it with green grass and little bodies playing all over the place, playing kickball and running back and forth. I remember particularly the monkey bars.
And we had the old swings with just the belt seat on chain. What I remember about this parking lot was we learned to square dance and jitterbug in the parking lot.
When you got to be the top dog in my class, it was the 5th grade. If you were really, really special and really, really good, you got to be the ball monitor. And the ball monitor at playground time would be able to throw the balls out. I got to be ball monitor, and my mom thought I'd never amount to anything. So that was the peak of my career at Lowell.
This is the original office. This is where the secretary sat. This is the door behind me that went to the principal's office. What's really neat to notice about this room is the time clock. This is really intricate. I don't know the first thing about how I would ever fix that, if I ever needed to, but somebody was sure thinking in 1939. We're here in the bathroom. What's nice to note about this bathroom is that it's original. It has all of the original clay tile in here. The plumbing fixtures are different, of course, but the floor tile and the wall tile are all the same. This is how it was done in 1939, and we haven't really done anything in here to change it. This is an interesting room. This is the original boiler room. It's almost 80 years old. We still use the original boiler. It still works great. The original air tanks and the condensate return tank, everything's original down. We used to have insulation on the pipes. We've removed the asbestos. They were asbestos. Other than that, this is original 1939 boiler room.
So there was an addition, I understand, built in 1949 by the greatest generation right after World War II.
You can see a difference in the bricks, and I believe that room over there was the kindergarten room, and I think that was the new addition in 1949.
And then another addition put on in 1955 by Bert Talcott, who was a early day contractor in Great Falls. Brad Talcott was an old classmate of mine, but his grandfather is the one that put the addition on, I believe from probably this point on, because you can tell the difference in the floor layout. They didn't have sheetrock after World War II and, or before World War II when this was built. Most of our schools in Great Falls Public Schools, the district has taken great care of them. They're well maintained, they're clean, they're shiny, they're bright. But all the walls have lath and plaster walls. Then you'd put stucco mud over the top of that with a wire mesh in it, and you would paint that. Well, because of that wire mesh in there, Great Falls High, for example, right now they've got the problem that it's not very conductive to wireless. All the plumbing was wrapped in asbestos, was the technology of the day. So it's not simple to tear out a toilet anymore because you've got, in many of our buildings, 3 stories of asbestos-wrapped pipes.
Our big job there was getting rid of the asbestos or handling it. Besides that, we had lead in the drinking water, we had radon. It became a real specialty getting rid of all of those things. We went on an energy-saving conquest. The architectural design of those buildings changed. The amount of window space was cut down tremendously. In that 10-year period, we worked very closely with the gas company. We spent $1.5 million retrofitting the windows. But in that 10-year period, we saved $6 million in utilities. So we had a net saving of $4.5 million.
Thanks to the generosity of the taxpayers, the empty lot became the construction site of the district's first completely new elementary school building in over 50 years. A groundbreaking ceremony for the project took place in July of 2017, a little over a year before the school building would open its doors for students. Sletton Construction would build the new facility.
This is a topping out ceremony, so it's basically to celebrate a milestone in a project. One of the last structural beams that's at the highest point of the job, you save it and have everyone sign it who's involved in the job. In this case, we have the students, the faculty from Roosevelt, the neighborhood, Lowell School alumni, which used to be on this site. We've got everyone is invited out to sign the beam so they can be a part of history. It's going to be placed in the building, and it's going to be a part of a permanent part of the school for as long as the school stands. So it's kind of a fun way to get people involved and excited about what's happening in Great Falls. So after this project, when we reach the milestone of setting the steel, as you can see, we're starting to frame a bunch of walls. And after the building shell is the interior, which means we're getting closer. So it's an important milestone to have the structure set, and that's where we're at right now. So we want to celebrate that.
Renamed Giant Springs Elementary, the new school opened its doors to students in the fall of 2018.
The 400 students and 51 staff members that will spend 180 days per year in our brand new Giant Springs Elementary School. Thank you to this Northside neighborhood.
Students from the Roosevelt District would attend the new school on the old Lowell lot. It was an exciting time to celebrate education in our community.
It was definitely time for us to move out of the old Roosevelt and into a safer location where we could implement best practices and 21st century technology. Our new Giant Springs facility allows us to have teachers working with students and meeting their individual needs. One of the advantages being at Giant Springs is that we have what we call breakout spaces in each of the learning communities for volunteers to work in small groups with children, one-on-one with groups. This building was designed around technology for today, 21st century technology. Teachers have the ability to access laptops, Promethean televisions, Chromebooks, any kind of technology to use with students on a day-to-day basis. We are so grateful to the Great Falls community, to all of our stakeholders for the resources and support to provide an excellent education into the future.